Hey everyone, Joshua Hanlon here at BrickCon Seattle 2018, and in front of me here we got this massive, long, beautiful Indiana Jones Lego display here. So I've got the builder right next to me, and he's going to take us through the front section of the build, and then we're going to bring you behind and get a behind-the-scenes look at how all of this works. So thanks so much for joining me. If you want to start in with the front section.
Yeah, okay, I'm Caleb Watson. So my build depicts the opening scene of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark throughout the entire temple. I called it Raiders of the Lost Idol. So here on the end is the scene where he's actually going after the idol. You can see that the idol goes up and down because after he grabs it in the movie, the column that it's resting on sinks down. The floor there is also pretty detailed because of the pressure. It's all pressure plated floors. So I had to angle everything on the floor there to make it look kind of a diamond shape. And then a little bit past that, before he makes it to the idol, there are all the little spears that shoot out. So in the wall, the spears are shooting out of decorated statues and other things like that. Moving back a little bit further, you can see Indiana Jones swinging over the chasm on his whip. So he just goes back and forth over that. Over on this next part, next to it, there's a door. On their way out, after Indiana Jones is trying to escape the temple collapsing, the door is closing. So I have this door opening and closing consistently, and Indiana Jones is on his side, and he pulls the whip out just before the door closes. The next little section is on their way into the temple too. It's when Indiana Jones reaches out into the light and the skeletons on the spikes pop out. So I have a mechanism there where Indiana Jones is holding a torch, and at that point there's a skeleton that keeps popping out in front of him. And then a little bit further past that is the centerpiece of the display, where on the way out, the iconic scene where the boulder chases Indiana Jones down the runway. So I've motorized this basically like a great ball contraption. So the boulder rolls all the way down and then recycles back to the top. So it's on a consistent loop. Indiana Jones is in the middle of the walkway. When the boulder rolls down, it hits a pressure plate that makes him slide out of the way due to a servo motor, and then he slides back after the boulder reaches a point past him.
Wow, that's amazing. That's certainly a lot of engineering that had to go into this build then. That's incredible.
Yeah, I would say that the boulder section took about 90% of the time on this entire build, even though it's just barely more than half of the entire length total.
Right. And so then the boulder rolls in here and then kind of comes to the back and restarts?
Yeah, a little bit past that, we're back to Indiana Jones and Satipo moving into the temple. So in this part, you can see all of the tarantulas that were crawling around on the floor. So all the spiders and tarantulas move around, and there's one on Satipo's back too. Then right outside the temple, you can see Indiana Jones on the ground, and Belloc is holding a gun on him and about ready to take his prize without having done any of the work. And then in the middle there's a little detail in the back. At the very beginning of the scene, when the rest of Indiana Jones's native party, like his guides, they hack through a bunch of reeds and find another stone statue there. So I built a similar depiction of that statue that scared them away for the background there. Okay. And then at the very end, Indiana Jones dives. He's running away from the Native Americans, and he dives, grabs a vine hanging from the tree, and swings into the river, where he reaches the seaplane that is flying above on the other side.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, so you've got the whole story there then.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So it looks great from the outside, and now we'll stop and come back and take a look at the back part of the build.
After Indiana Jones swings into the river, he boards the seaplane. So on this side, I have the seaplane flying over the temple as they're making their escape. Indy in there. The pilot Jock has a pet snake, and as we all know, Indiana Jones hates snakes, so he's holding it displeased in the plane. And I have that one hooked up to a motor too, so the propeller is moving.
Okay.
lower in the back here, you can see some of the other mechanisms that are going on. Some of them are more obvious than others. A lot of it is powered simply by cams, just making things move side to side. I have 5 motors total and 1 servo motor powering this whole thing. And there are a lot of really complicated little things here. And then also the mechanisms here, including this one that raises the ball back up, has carried enough load that there are actually bushings that I've had ground into powder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so every once in a while I have to open that up and replace some of the pieces because there's just that much force that it takes, which is kind of interesting.
So yeah, it's like you said earlier, it's almost like a great ball contraption type of layout here. So talk about kind of how the ball gets back up there.
Yeah, so at the very end, there's a conveyor belt that has some rubber pieces on the top that kind of pull it back onto this. And then for most of the distance, it's powered by a stepper. And on the stepper, there's a conveyor belt that just helps push it along. Because the ball is actually built completely out of Lego bricks, it's not quite round. So every once in a while, it does get stuck in certain positions. So that's what the conveyor is for, is just to jostle it around enough.
Okay.
And then it just slowly works its way rolling over to the end. And then I have a rotating system of panels that just slowly push it up to the top. And then as they push it to the top, there's a little trigger that releases the other ball. There are always 2 balls in this cycling at the same time. So one of them is actually above the runway because in the movie, you can actually see the ball when they're walking in the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, you've got one place there ready to go then always.
Yeah.
So how has this been running for you here? I've noticed there's occasionally an issue where you've got to help the ball along and that sort of thing. So what's been some of the challenges with this build?
I mean, in general, all of the challenges circulate around the fact that the ball is just simply not round.
Okay.
I spent a ton of time on the front because it has to actually hit the pressure plates in order to make the minifigure move out of the way. So I just have to place a rock, run it a bunch of times, and see if that bumps it the correct position. And then just along the back, trying to get the mechanisms to move smoother and have less friction and carry as little load as they possibly can.
Yeah. So when you started on this build, what was the planning like for you as far as making sure both that you had the facade of it that had the great storytelling and then also all of the moving parts in the back and combining all of that up?
When I started, my first idea was definitely that this was going to be motorized. So I wouldn't have done this if it wasn't going to be motorized. And then I started out, I've actually never built rock patterns before this. So I started out just building a lot of rocks along the front and just trying to get that look. Because even if the mechanism worked, if I didn't capture the look, then it wouldn't work as well. So I captured the look and then had to figure out a way to get it back. I took some inspiration from things I'd seen in great ball contraptions, but at this scale and with a ball that's not actually round, I had to do a number of other things to actually propel it in certain positions. Overall, I feel like I combined them decently well. Took a really long time to get the ball working, and everything else kind of just built past that, you know?
No, I'm sure, but I think it did work well in the end. So is this breakdown into sections, or what's kind of the build like here as far as the different areas of it?
It breaks down into 4 primary sections. They're all in increments of 16, which is one of the longer pieces that Lego makes. So in that way, they're all similar. Each piece is divided also just where the mechanisms end, because like for this big piece here, I had to design a transition for the ball to pass over, but for all of the other ones, I just tried to make it so that each mechanism was independent in its own part.
Yeah. Looks like some technical issues going on in there, but I think it's a wonderful build, and it's great to see from the front and everything there, and see how the story unfolds, and then come back and look at all the engineering that went into it. So magnificent work here. Do you plan to do more builds like this in the future that kind of have the combination of all this engineering, then also telling a story?
Yeah. In the past, I've built a number of other things that are similar to this.
Okay.
I really like to put the mechanisms in. It adds a really nice extra element that catches people's eye. I just think it's also more fun to build like that. And it's the challenge of incorporating two things together, the mechanism and the look. So almost all of the things I build have some combination of complicated mechanism to create the full scene.
Yeah. Well, great work. Thank you so much for taking the time to explain it all to us here. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.